Hey guys, this is going to be my first video to my trading channel. It's mostly just going to be a trading journal for me personally. Obviously, it's going to be on YouTube, so you guys are more than welcome to criticize the way I trade. I'm all ears. I've only been trading for about 6 months, so I'm quite new to it, future specifically. You can see on this trade, I did 10 micros on MES. I normally used to do a lot of M&Q, but recently just changed to MES, and I feel like the levels are just a lot cleaner. So I bought my combine today. My very first trade was like a small win, like 130 bucks. I mostly use the 15-minute orb. I do kind of go off of that at open, which is 8:30 for me. I do typically wait the 15 minutes as well. And at this point, it had broken up, so I was wanting to go long. I did stick to this level most of my morning because I still felt like it was going to go long, and at some point it kind of just made a turnaround. So that's kind of where most of my trades went. I normally don't really overtrade or revenge trade anymore. I used to, but now that I kind of understand the levels a little bit better, as you can see, I also draw the fair value gaps out too, which typically does help me. Which is why I still wanted to go long at this point. I do use trend lines as well. I don't really pay attention to them all too much. It's kind of just like a little support for me, as well as like the VWAP and the EMAs and stuff. Sometimes I'll just take them off because they're, they kind of don't tell me anything. The fair value gaps, those help me a little bit better, especially whenever I start off with like the daily candle, and then I'll go down each time frame and I'll kind of just make sure that it still makes sense for me to go one way or the other. So at the beginning of this day, my bias was to go short, but then like I said, because it broke away up to the upside from the 15-minute, I was looking for longs for a good while. I probably, took this trade maybe 3 times. But I mean, I really wasn't super confident either, just because if you can tell from like the top wicks, it wasn't going higher. It really wasn't breaking up higher. So, I mean, at that point, I should have called it quits, but I still stayed kind of in that trade a little bit too long. I did end up losing about 1200, I think at most. I didn't record all of my trades because, of course, I was still kind of like looking for levels, and clearly here I was still trying to go long. So yeah, I feel like I stayed in this trade a little bit too long, and even whenever it kind of broke a little bit more down, I mean, it's because it was kind of just hitting for value gaps, and they just weren't closing. They weren't giving me a lot of confirmation. But I think that's one of the problems that I do have, is that I'm very impatient when it comes to the trades. There have been times when I do wait for like confirmation, or when I wait for certain things to show up or present themselves, and I do really well on those. But like I said, I kind of looked at the higher time frames. I did want to go short, but then, when it kind of broke apart, which typically for those trend lines that I do make, and as you can see here, I was already negative 900. But like I said, at one point, I think after this, I was negative 1200. I wasn't trying to blow my account, but at the same time, there's just certain, I guess, trades that I do wait for. And I think that's why, my stop losses are kind of tight. And I do try to see certain levels and see, what it tells me. It wasn't until it started breaking down to that red trend line that you see there that I started wanting to go short, just so that way I can have, a definite like stop loss on where I can put it. I don't really like my stop losses to be too wide. And so you can see here, I did take it. I did forget to record like the first couple of seconds of it, but as you can see, I'm already in the positive, so I did put my stop loss to break even, so that way it's a risk-free trade. Where my take profit is, that's where it sits a 4 hour fair value gap, which the 4 hour candle, I believe, closes at 9. So then it opens again and then it will close again like at 12. I typically don't trade this late either, but at this point it was kind of presenting to me like, okay, well, it broke on this side. It has to go down to this level. Right now when I enter, I do typically enter 1 minute or 5 minute time frames. And as you can see here, it does look very promising for me. I'll flip back and forth to several time frames. But then when you start seeing like a couple more of the 1 minute candles closing, it didn't give me too much confidence anymore. So I did end up getting out of that trade a little bit early. And it still didn't bring me in the positive, I believe, which is kind of weird. But you can see here I was already negative 8 something and I took the profit at 900. So it still said I was negative 400. So it's whatever. So then I go back and I kind of look at, where I kind of wait for that pull back up into like another fair value gap, which it kind of tapped into a 5 minute. It was a very tiny fair value gap, so I wasn't too confident in it again. So then I got out early on that trade as well. Took like, little wins, little losses. I typically don't like doing, I don't really pay attention to like the money aspect of it. I kind of just look at the levels of it. And then if the candles aren't closing or if I'm not feeling good about the momentum or anything like that, I'll kind of just get out of the trade a little bit early. And most of the time it was MES. I did take a trade or two on MNQ. I think one win, one loss, but the levels, like I said, on MES are just a little bit cleaner. I do gold as well, but I typically only trade gold during after hours. And it's very rare too, because there are times where gold doesn't really hit specific levels and it just takes forever to hit certain levels. So if there's a level that is hit, I will look into it, but I really don't trade gold every single day. So here it is kind of consolidating on the very top. Again, it's not really giving me the momentum downwards that I'm looking for, but my stop loss is pretty tight. It's, it's like $100, and I'm going in 10 micros, which is technically one mini, I guess. But like I said, it's a combine, so I mean, I do typically want to try to pass it a lot quicker. I know my trades are very stupid. I do know this. I am pretty impatient, but I don't really revenge trade or overtrade all too often. Today was kind of an exception just because I was looking at certain levels. I just wasn't patient enough to wait for those levels to be hit, because sometimes it'll take off without you. And, to kind of get in, like if I would have gotten in at that little pullback that it just, I would have been stuck in consolidation like I kind of was. And then so I go to MNQ at this point because it kind of tapped into that trend line, like, pretty. And so that's where my stop loss was. And I was hoping that I kind of just went back to this other bottom wick at the bottom here. I prefer this where I'm like kind of recording my trades and, talking about it rather than, showing you guys my executions, because it's very different whenever you're seeing those candles open and close and the momentums and stuff. It kind of changes some perspective and it helps me. Like I said, this is a trading journal for myself. I'm hoping that I can record every single day if I don't forget, and then I will post them as they come, whether I win or lose. Obviously you saw how many times I lost today. So at this point I'm still down 400. So then, I'm still looking at MNQ. But MNQ is so wicky sometimes. And it's so hard to like pick a stop loss on where you want to go, because I feel like MNQ will try to tap you out before it heads like that direction. And it's a little bit more, I guess, costly if you make a mistake. So I think this was the last trade of M&Q for this day. And like I said, I'm open to critiquing my trading if you guys have any advice. I did have discords that I did pay for. Nothing against those people. They were really great. You know, they take their wins and whatnot. They both trade very differently. I just feel like as soon as I stopped listening to anybody else and I kind of just had my own perspective on the markets and my own intuition, my wins were getting a little bit better because I wasn't really relying on someone else, if that makes any sense. That's just my perspective. So currently, I'm just by myself in this, and I'm currently not working, so this is what I do in the morning. Like I said, this was my first day on the combine, and you could tell that I was at a loss the majority of the day, but I was still waiting for certain levels. So at this point, I go in short on this one just because I was waiting for it to tick down a little bit lower than that other candle. And so it did. And at this point, I'm going into 15 micros. The level that I wanted it to hit at, which was that take profit that I had, is that 4-hour candle that I was waiting for. Because if you look at the 4-hour candle, that's technically like the next liquidity that I'm looking for, so that way it can go back up. Again, I wasn't patient, but at this point it's 12 o'clock. I normally don't trade during this time either. I'm not really liking the way those candles are closing either, but it's not really telling me that it's going to go any higher. And I made sure that my profit target was at 1500 for the day, so that way I don't have to, well, 1600, but I still ended up closing in this trade a little bit early because I didn't want to push the 50% margin. Because I will be trading tomorrow. Today is October 15th. It's Wednesday. So then I will show you my calendar as well. And that's what I have so far. And hopefully you guys can keep following me.